Good evening, guys. Um, I go with that. I really got to break that habit. I do. I apologize. I'm going to talk a little bit about spiritual warfare. A lot of people don't believe in it. I do. Witnessed it and been part of it, attacked many times. Anybody who's listened to any of my other videos, it's something I talk about on occasion. And I've also mentioned many times that, when I dream, at least 90%, if not 95% of the time, I lucid dream. I'm always aware that I'm dreaming. I can control it and change it. More often than not, I just sit back and observe. Point being is a very common thing. Spiritual warfare comes in many shapes and forms. For me, most recently, nah, not even most recently, as in, I believe it was last night, I was attacked in my dreams. This has happened mm, probably half a dozen times in the last 2 years or so. Prior to that, they were different individuals who would come into my life and different things like being hit with weird bouts of depression or confusion, even physical pain sometimes, feeling very drained, just out of nowhere, out of the blue. Um, I've gotten so sensitive to people's energies and stuff that at times it will literally feel like a physical presence either literally pushing on me or biting at me or pulling. In this particular dream, it was oops, sorry. Let me make sure that okay. Sorry about that. I gotta get a new cell phone number. Anyway, in this particular dream, I don't remember all the details now, other than general theme. It was this weird kind of cat and mouse game. It was in a first. It was like a I want to say it was like a high rise office or something, and then it was just moving throughout the city, and then it was kind of like this weird kind of carnival. It ended up being like a gathering of some sort. A lot of performers there. People were dancing. Very interesting. Some kind of show. And at first, I was hiding. It was something, someone, particular entity. I don't have the exact identification, and even if I did, I wouldn't speak its name. Um, we'll just call it a hitchhiker. Was jumping from person to person throughout the dream. So at some point, I got bored of hiding and decided to flip the script and started doing the same thing and started hunting it. So it was we were playing this cat and mouse game. I think what happened was when I stopped running and I flipped the script, and at one point I think I had kind of faced it, and was almost like at the beginning it was like, I guess you could call it a scout, for lack of better terms. Ran off when it realized who I was, and then somebody else came. Something about a necklace. That's one of the ways in the dream I knew where it was, other than the red eyes. There was a particular necklace that kept changing from person to person. I started trying to track this thing down. We're playing this cat and mouse game, and finally, at one point, we ended up catching each other, cornering each other, however exactly it went. I think I caught it or cornered it, and then it lashed out quite violently. That part I do remember. It was a massive amount of pressure right at my heart chakra. Very pinpointed, very focused. It was like, and it literally felt like that, like not quite like a spear point, but probably about the size of a fist, like a pillar trying to pierce. And it didn't actually pierce my skin or anything. I wouldn't let it. It did kept. It was weird. It was like it was draining and at the same time like inflicting heartache, heartbreak, sorrow, pain, misery, depression. Um, and I remember at one point it literally looked like almost like a broomstick or something. I had it, and I was holding it, and initially it went into what looked like a pane of glass, which was actually turned out to be kind of like a mirror, but not quite. And I could see into it and kind of like around a corner. It was literally essentially a dimensional plane. Um, I won't get into the details of mirror magic and that kind of stuff, but yeah, um, I'm familiar with it enough to recognize it. Leave it at that. And it got to a point where it was starting to I was starting to struggle. I won't say it overpowered me because it didn't. But I had like slipped or fallen backwards, and I think that's what happened. Was this mirror pain went up and it distracted me. I lost my balance, and so I was holding this. At which point, I started to just draw on certain ascended masters for their protection, and I would feel these waves come in through my crown and radiate out through all of my chakra points, but primarily my heart. And it was like you could just basically say it was, I mean, for lack of better terms, it was not only did it feel, but it also looked like just a beam of pure white light. And it would come down and it would refill my heart, so all the pain would subside and it would kind of radiate out. And every time it would weaken this person. And they were getting more and more frustrated and angry. At which point I just challenged it. Like, come on, you really want to do this? Let's do this. And then at some point, I know it was one of my ancestors. I think it might have been my grandmother because it definitely had a very similar energy to my mother. Looked like my mother, but my mother's still alive, although not that my mother's not capable of that. They had reached out a window and they grabbed my hand to help me stand up again. And once I stood up, the advantage drastically swung. Because then also behind me, another ancestor had come out around the corner, assisting me just energetically. Um, Needless to say, shortly thereafter, it just kind of disappeared. It just like took off. been a little while since I've had any dream or attacks like that in my dreams. I've had others. I remember one time I had one that somebody or something, this was a somebody, came into my dream cloaked as somebody else. I immediately recognized it. No, not the person I was looking at. Like I could feel energetically, no, something's wrong here. And they just kept trying to project fear. And they they had similar. It was like this. I think it was like a dinner or a buffet or something, some kind of banquet, and they backed me up against a table, and they were like really up in my face, and it just kept. It was like they were screaming, "Fear, fear, fear!" They just wanted me to be afraid. And the whole time, I wasn't afraid. I just kept looking at them like puzzled, like, okay, I know this is not who I'm looking at. Like, I can feel that this is not the person I'm seeing right now. And they like pushed me back to the point where I was like doing a back bend over this table. And finally, I screamed, "No!" And it completely ripped this mask right off their face. And the person behind the mask was in complete shock and terror because they did not expect not only that level of resistance, but the amount of power that came out of my voice, and for it to completely shred any of their defenses and the mask that they had chosen. So, yeah, spiritual warfare. It is real. It does happen. I will say this: a lot of the a lot of the lower level, I guess, or lower vibrational attacks that I've been witness to over my life don't even affect me anymore. Since I've chosen to take my power back and embrace certain gifts, my level of protection is a lot greater than I realized. And acknowledging it has obviously amplified that as well. Yeah, very interesting. I suppose at some point, me and my sister will do a series of videos on this and get quite a bit more detailed into some of the mechanics and ideologies behind certain things. There is, other than people's free will and intent, there are purposes behind everything. There's a divine purpose. And I'm not going to get into the discussion about whether something is preordained or it's destiny. Not in this video anyway. Needless to say, everything you've experienced, good, bad, or indifferent, has a lesson in it. And oops, even that. Wow. Okay. I guess I'm not supposed to talk about that. Good night.